Hi, everyone. My name is Chris Corsa. I'm the Senior Director of Education and Engagement, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to our first Downtown at Sundown virtual. Today with us, we have artists Anna O'Kane, Michelle Monjoy, and Shivani Arnold. The first thing that we're going to be doing in this presentation is I'm going to be sharing my screen with a couple of slides to tell you a little bit more about ToDo a Mending project. Then I will be asking some questions to the artists. They'll respond, and then we'll open the panel for you guys to use the Q&A feature and ask us some questions. So again, thank you very much for joining us, and we'll get started. So I'm going to roll a video. So for some reason, it went back to stop sharing. So I'm going to try to do that again. I apologize. So ToDo a Mending project started back in 2018 at 1805 Gallery in downtown San Diego. And it started out of a need of building community and healing and coming up with a solution towards repair. We were all, in this case, the artists, thought that we as a community were all facing the challenges of a tough election and felt quite devastated, and that we needed to start kind of from the ground up, coming together at healing each other and supporting each other. And that's a little bit about how the project start. I will allow our artists to tell you more about it in a little bit, but this project started welcoming other artists and colleagues of the artist to start teaching and using everybody's resources as a way of supporting each other and as a way of sharing with the community. And they hosted a series of workshops. Sometimes they had young people, sometimes colleagues and friends, adults that walk off the street to learn a new skill. Everything from maybe repairing blouse and some trousers to learning how to make pasta. A few months later, I reached out to the artists, and they were already bringing these projects into their school campuses. They, but all have been educators and continue to be educators. But Anna and Siobhan teach in the college environment and have been bringing these projects to several campus. They teach students aspects of notions of making and repair, and inspiring creativity. And here they are at Olin College. And as I was saying, a few months later, I invited them to bring ToDo a Mending project to the Museum of Contemporary Art, with the intention of reaching out to the downtown community and building a new fabric for the organization, a new way of thinking in terms of how we engage with our audience and how it's a lot about learning from each other. And what they decided to do was put together a series of 32 workshops, led some by them and some by colleagues who had submitted an interest in participating in the project. And our three artists, and Michelle and Siobhan, curated a wonderful offering that went from fixing your surfboard to making salsa, learning how to bead mirrors into fabric, drawing, sketching, pot making, just to name a few. And we had a lot of success. People were coming into the space. And I think the success relied in the ability to have conversations and understand that everybody had something to offer, whether as a participant or as a teacher, a mentor. We all were in the space contributing to building our own community. And so here are some photos of what those experiences look like. And in many instances, there were stories of hope and healing and supporting each other and listening each other out. So sometimes they even invited people to drop on their garments, and the artists were there to fix things for people they had never met but had a need, and they were responding to the need of our community, that in this case the downtown community. When COVID started, I became curious about what will ToDo be doing, and I think they too were asking themselves that same question, because it was eminent that we all had to close, shelter in place, and avoid gathering. And to my surprise, and I think the benefit of all of us, Anna, Michelle, and Siobhan took ToDo into the virtual world with a lot of courage, but also with a lot of generosity, a lot of care for all of us who are on the other side as the audience and receivers of these opportunities. And again, put together a series of workshops that conclude this weekend, where we all can participate virtually and learn from each other and engage. They took to Instagram to share what's coming. Then they uploaded some of those workshops. Also, they currently exist in the YouTube channel, and we all can see them over and over. So if you are craving a chai tea, you can always go back and make your own chai tea. If you feel like your student at home or your relative at home needs some escape, they can learn how to weave or make pom-poms with Katie Reese. They really pulled together, again, a series of community givers, I call them, artists who are willing to give what they know to do for us to feel supported. So here's some examples of those Zoom sessions. And again, here's the YouTube link and the links to their websites for you all to be able to learn more from the project. But I'm going to go ahead and exit from my presentation to open the conversation. And as I said, ask our artists some questions for them to share with you. So let's start with Anna's gonna take our first question, and I'm gonna remind her to unmute, because we all forget about this technological part of it and we start talking into the space. But can you just, I know I summarized a little bit about how ToDo came about, but maybe more about how you three started conversing about conceiving a project like this. I talked about it being in a gallery, but before it was in a gallery, kind of, it was an ideation. And I would love for you to share a little bit about how does a project like this start from an idea into something that can occupy a space.
Right. Conversations, I think conversations at art openings. I remember meeting Michelle at the Athenaeum for her show that had a wild title, The Pit Bull Licked Babies and Scented It with Ham. Is that right, Michelle? Wait, you're muted. You can respond. And at Art Produce, I met you again at Art Produce, and I had known Siobhan's father, and he told me that I would like her work. And then she moved to town, and I checked out her website and saw her work and liked it. And just telling you how this all sort of happened. I think Michelle and Siobhan met each other and found connections between their work and what they did and their practice. And the time was kind of crazy. We were all meeting each other at this time after the presidential election. And there was a group of women that put together profoundly strong, interesting women, a show at Helmuth Projects that I think was so powerful and so moving. It was Cara West and Tara Senti-Bear and Sasha Jones-Steen and Lauren Lockhart. And people were contacted across, I was not in town at the time, and I got back in town, but I could send a picture. I had a phone picture, and I wanted to be included in the Nasty Women show. And I think it was just, all these things were coalescing at the moment. We didn't plan to do this. And 2000, well, I do want to say that after the Women's March, but before the Women's March, I was learning how to knit. Siobhan tried to teach me how to knit a pussy hat for the march. You know, I did it, I finished it, but I'm not a knitter, right? But Michelle and Siobhan are both beautiful knitters, and I just, there was so much we were carrying around inside of us about what was happening. It was clear. There was a lot of grief. There was a lot of pain. The Me Too movement was happening. It was just like, what are we going to do with this? And there was a table that I set up at a show at City College, and I called up Michelle and said, will you please, let's mend. We'd already talked about it. It was going to happen. And so she showed up. Then Siobhan found out we were there. So Siobhan and Michelle and I sat down at this table, and the name of the show that was there was Art in the Age of Trump. And I had done another piece, but I thought this show needs mending. And we had already talked about it. Michelle and I had, let's do something with that word. It's such a beautiful word. And the three of us sat there and did Siobhan was working on some of her own work and then would help with mending occasionally. And we just kind of coalesced right there. And Michelle wrote this beautiful letter to 1805, and based on all of our conversations, I think, and you guys should jump in, because I'm just telling the basic history of what I think it was our way of figuring out a way to act and to not sit and to do something that was positive for everyone. That's what I mean, there was this table of mending that brought us together. There was a table for us to sit and talk and mend other people's clothes as well as whatever we wanted to do. So, and I have to credit Terry Hughes. She was so willing to let me do that. She was, yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. So Siobhan, Michelle, I don't know.
I think the willingness of people to go along with this project, especially Chris. I mean, have we ever made salsa in a gallery before? Lauren, Siri at 1805, every school we show up with, it's really beautiful how willing folks have been to embrace this project.
I think students love it. They love it. What are we going to do? We're going to mend our clothes? Yeah, we're going to mend you're going to mend your clothes. So.
And I think you said something towards the end of the conversation about the need to act. And I think that lends well to the next question I had, which is, what about our current circumstances inspired you to revisit the project in a digital format? And how is this time similar to the time you conceived the project? What about the need to act? And I think Siobhan is going to answer that for us.
For Michelle?
Yeah. So one of the things that, really brought us together to do the project the first time when we did it as a residency for a month at 1805 Gallery was this feeling of needing to do something. And, that's in a part how we came up with the name was this idea of to do. What do you know how to do, right? And we met and we talked about what could we call this? What does it entail? What are the different kinds of workshops we could do? And invite people to share their knowledge. So that idea, in this time period when everything shut down, when everything got crazy, which now I should say seems like a million years ago, I'm thinking back on it today and I'm realizing, that was like 2 months ago. It's like unbelievable how much has happened in such a short period of time. And more than 2 months now, right? A little bit more. So it was really a natural progression of the project. It was really instinctual, I think, immediately. I was looking back at some of our discussions. We live in all different parts of the county, so we're often texting each other or emailing each other ideas or thoughts or whatever. And I was looking back and I noticed literally the day that everything started to shut down, Michelle sends us a text saying, let's do some mending workshops on Instagram. It was instant, it just seemed like something that was important to do, to bring people together and meet a need for community. Did you want to add to that, Michelle?
Yeah, I think that what we three have in common is we don't dilly-dally around. We just see something that needs to be done and we do it. It just, we don't have to hesitate, especially in this time. And, we kind of started this back up, framed around masks too. We started all making masks and getting other folks involved in making masks and sending out patterns and all that. And then, it moved closer towards what is now existing online with these workshops.
Yeah, that was, the first thing was actually, I remember Anna saying, we need to make masks. And at that particular time, that was the moment where everyone was saying masks are not a thing, they're no good, they're do more harm than good. And the whole time I kept thinking, no, this can't be right. It's gotta be, it's better than nothing, right? I kept saying to myself, it's better than nothing, it's better than nothing. So we did start doing masks and we had a community of people, and we still have a community of artists some that have been part of ToDo workshops and some, loosely connected, that are all still making masks. And one of our focuses is that whatever it is that we do and we offer is for free. We do not expect anything in return. We are reusing material, fabric that I'm using and supplying, and Michelle and Anna and all of our friends, our wonderful friends that are doing it, is largely recycled fabric. You know, so we're really trying to access that kind of making do aesthetic. And so to think about the beginning of the COVID crisis, it's, you know, it really felt like things were happening so fast. You know, things were changing hourly at that time. We didn't know, you know, if we were going to be able to get groceries at all. I mean, forget toilet paper. Like, how about things like, you know, the run on flour and beans and dried goods? And, you know, so everybody's thinking about, you know, this idea of making do with whatever you have, planting a garden. So much of this has so much reflection in the past in terms of thinking about like the make do and mend from World War II, and, you know, time where, you know, people in England are under, you know, strict rationing. So here we are wondering, is this what's happening right now? Are we ever going to get out of our homes, right? So all you had to do was look on Facebook to see everybody showing their baked bread, you know? So it was like very clear that our project fit perfectly into what is happening right now. So, you know, we just felt like this is what we're supposed to do. If any way there was a moment for the ToDo project, this was it.
Yeah.
But yeah, the irony of it, of course, is that we can't get together as a physical community.
No.
We are all about sitting around the table. And meanwhile, we have to do it this way. We have to do it virtually. And it's just, it's odd. So but it's
I
good.
think that segues again perfectly for the next question, in a sense of what are some of the lessons you've learned from digital programming, from bringing these sessions to the virtual world and connecting in this platform. And I think you all probably have different perspectives, because one of the things that has happened, and it happened in the physical space too, is that you take turns at hosting, and sometimes the three of you are present and sometimes not so much, because you all have lives and are artists that are doing other things and have family to care for. So what are some of the things that you all have learned, and you all might share something different?
For me personally, it really affirmed that the power of making. And, you know, we were seeing it happening on social media, and it affirms that, and there's this beautiful Anne Hamilton quote, and she says that making is a response to the need to understand. You know, we were so confused and so fragmented, and, you know, if you can use your hands, it helps. It helps our mental health. It helps to bake bread. It helps to knit. It helps to do all those things. So for me, I think this project, the shift to online, yes, was a complete natural, but it also almost has more resonance because each person can incorporate it into their own lives, you know, into their homes too.
For me, one of the things I realized the first time we did it, I'm like, oh my gosh, I get to see Michelle and Siobhan. I mean, I was so happy to see you. I was like, hey, don't go. Let's just talk a few minutes, you know, let's just talk a few minutes. You know, teaching, Siobhan, and you know this, you leave your course after 8 weeks, 10 weeks, 8 weeks, yeah. And then you have 8 weeks left and it's a sculpture class and you're like, whoa, man, how am I going to do this? And the anxiety that you're warned about isn't there that first week. And suddenly that you feel that from the students. So it's been rocky. I think for every teacher out there, we were told to be kind and generous and observant, that the students might not feel comfortable with this. They might not turn on their video screen just so that you can, and I've had students that didn't do that the whole time. You might not ever see into their room. And after my first Zoom meeting with the sculpture students, they did such a great job. I thought, oh, this is going to be great. And then it was hard. It was hard on them, and you felt it. And so the whole thing has been up and down. And we're done though for the semester. And I think all I really wanted to say was that I really missed seeing Siobhan and Michelle.
We do spend a lot of time, even after our workshops. We're like, okay, bye everybody, and then we might sit there for another hour sometimes. But you know, I mean, my takeaway is like, yeah, there's all this talk about Zoom fatigue, which we all have to a certain degree. But hey, thank God we have it, you know, because I can't imagine this happening, you know, 15 years ago or 10 years ago when there wasn't video conferencing.
I don't know what we would have done.
Literally see people, show them what I'm doing, and feel like, you know, I'm still in a community, that my community's still there, far more than the kind of, you know, whatever you want to call it, this Facebook cycle, whatever that is.
It's the live versus the asynchronous versus the synchronous, and we had them live, and I loved it. That part I loved. So I'm glad I didn't have to do it asynchronous where I got to make videos and I just turn on the videos and they can look at it whenever they want. I wouldn't really want to do that.
But I mean, for us for our group, Anna and Michelle, I think, you know, we're kind of like, yeah, we teach for a living, we teach all the time, and then yet we're going to sign up to teach again and do the YouTube channel. But it's actually like a wonderful respite from worrying about my students, you know? So,
yeah.
So I've been thinking a lot about kind of this moment in terms of isolation and loneliness, and how even if some of us have the privilege to be in environments where we have the support system of our families or our spouses, or it still feels very lonely and isolated from the everyday interactions that we learn from, in terms of you go to the grocery store and you maybe experience a new food because you see somebody pulling out a can of a shelf. When you're sitting ordering groceries at your monitor, you don't get that. You don't get that learning. You don't get the learning from the cues of maybe seeing that somebody's taking a different path on a trail and you're curious about that trail. So how do you think that now in this environment are we able to build that sort of social connectedness, like the idea of building community and helping each other learn from each other's cues and walk together and find solutions? Have you seen this happen during the workshops that have happened online? And does it feel like we're working together towards something?
Yeah, it's, I'm going to grab this one because you know, it's a giant pause right now, and we're thinking and sorting through and what is working and what isn't working. And, you know, we're bombing a few things, and then okay, what didn't work, and let's figure it out. And it kind of makes you also like take it all apart and say, what is really important about sitting together? And can we capture what we have about sitting together? And, you know, is it about physical touch, you know, and sharing those little sidebars? And I think, you know, we're learning that it's nice to leave a little space for quiet as we're having these times together, so that similar to how it is when we're sitting around the table. I think it's also, you know, important to laugh together. Sometimes there have been days without laughter, and to laugh even in this Zoom way is very connecting, you know. And so what if some of my favorite moments I've seen on television are when the kids run in and Zoom bomb somebody, the laughter and that vulnerability and that sharing of our personal spaces and all that sort of stuff. I think there's some really juicy bits in that. I'm also thinking a lot about just moving forward in this shift of economies. We've lived in this super capitalistic economy that's been driving us, and everything was based on money, and the value was all about money. And now we look, and everything from, the frontline workers who are all making $10, $15 an hour practically, who are saving our lives. And I think about maybe we can shift this to being like an economy about generosity. And if that was the driving force about kindness and generosity and caring, think of how our world could change. And I really am like hoping that we all are wearing our masks because we care for each other, because I care about you. And I care that you don't get this, and, I think this is the big picture kind of thing that gets me all weepy and scared a little bit, because I don't want to go back to what we were before. I want to really, I think we all are in an accord here that we want to go to a different place. Whether or not ToDo is a little tiny bit of that, I think maybe we'd hope. But.
And I just have two more questions before I open the floor to the audience. And maybe I'll tweak this question a bit to align with what you were just saying, Michelle. The idea of not going back to where we were. So kind of thinking about your practice and what about your own individual practice that you bring to ToDo will shift, change? Or do you see you guys why either taking this project further, or are there elements of this process that are informing what you're doing with your other experiences? And for the audience, Anna is a sculptor who is about to open a show. I feel like the last time I saw you, Anna, you were in that talking to me about your giant piece that you were about to install that I'm not sure that it opened to the public. Michelle has worked in two exhibitions that got to see one maybe a week and a half of the public and the other a day or less or not even. And Siobhan, I'm not sure if you were in the process of also creating new work and had to just shift. So do you guys want to talk a little bit about your personal practice and what are some of the things that you're bringing from ToDo, or maybe even distancing from ToDo?
Well, I think I'm working on a piece right now that I'm not sure if it will see the light of day, but I'm completing it to be photographed. But that piece, the piece that I'm working on now, is so completely related to our current situation in terms of, thinking about disease and memory and the immune system. But I actually I included other people in my piece, my individual piece this time. So I actually have other artists that have, or I should say artists, friends and artists who have contributed to the piece, their own thoughts and physical touch. So there's kind of, it is a little bit quilt-like in that regard. Yeah, that's for me.
Great. So it seems like the social aspect of ToDo kind of came into this new work.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Anna.
The piece that I was talking to you about when you were there at this college, I am interested in the soapbox, and so I made 2, and I want to make 3 more, and I'll do that. And that show will open up again at Miracosta in the fall, and maybe they'll let a few people in at a time for people to see it. But I definitely realized the element that was the most dynamic in terms of the piece was the soapbox, for anyone to stand on, to sing a song, to recite a poem, to tell someone something they've never told them. And so that was it was my way to just set that up for other people to use as well. Ideally, they were going to be drug around campus, but none of that happened. So
Yeah. For me, I kind of go back to, I've been making a lot. At first, I couldn't think about making work at all. I was just scattered and frazzled, and I couldn't have a complete thought to save my life. And eventually, about a month in, my art brain kind of came back, and I started realizing that a lot of my work is about like frailties and shortcomings. And, I do a lot of the words on hankies, and there's still always kind of this exploring ways to empathize with each other in art, and whether it's the actual act of knitting together or the fact that it is knitted together, those are still social components to the work. So I think for me, this is just going to add another layer to the work that I'm doing, and that we will be different afterwards means the work will be different, but it'll still be a lot of what I think about,
Thank you for sharing, and it gives me hope. I think a lot about the success of ToDo is how you three bring yourselves together and your whole self into the project. You as a teacher, you as a parent, you as a spouse, you as a friend, all of you comes into the project, and we all get to be with you, the individual, not just the artist who speaks about their practice or who maneuvers kind of the social interactions of a project like ToDo. So do you want to speak a little bit about that vulnerability of bringing your whole self into the project, whether you might be having a good day or an exhausting day? I think in the month or the several months that we were together at the museum, I got to see a lot of that, happily more of the positive than sometimes the frustrations of the day. But I think that allows all of us that are able to participate in your experiences to connect further. And I want you to tell us a little bit about that, because I think it's something that I see even now in the videos that are live in YouTube, that I'm like in awe that all can be translated to the virtual world.
That we're not about perfection.
It's less about being perfect than it is about being yourself.
I do.
Well, Anna and I were both just talking before we talked to you today, Chris, about I really want to redo my workshop. I just think I sounded like an idiot. It was, really mixed up. The images weren't working. And Michelle completely talked us down. Michelle was like,
it doesn't have to be perfect.
This is the experience. It's a reflection of now, right?
Yeah. I, on a personal note, this kind of came to me at the very end of the MCA project. And I moved a million times when I was a kid, a whole bunch of times. And I was always the new kid, which makes you feel like an outsider. And on the converse side, my dad was a hotel manager. So his job was to welcome people, and I didn't feel welcomed as this new kid, so it was this oppositional thing. And I realized how much of that energy I bring to the project of wanting to really welcome people and say, come in, make eye contact, say hi to everybody. I mean, it's exhausting, but it's a really important part of the project. And we all do it so well. Nobody walks in the door or comes on the Zoom thing without us saying, hi, who are you? What's your name? And that kind of thing. And, it comes from that really wiggly wobbly place of me as that 8-year-old walking into that classroom, but, whatever.
I felt like that my most I was most interested in and sort of shocked by it just because we did it so naturally. I loved it. I thought it worked really well when we opened up the space and all both times and at different colleges and or schools we could manage it really well between the three of us. We knew each other as well. It was like, it's your turn. You know what I mean? We're going to do this together. We're going to be gracious together, or we're going to be pragmatic together. We're going to figure out who's
We're having a really
Just the look, we look at each other and
yeah,
we're
it was
hey,
like, yeah.
no.
yeah. It was good we had three of us in that room most of the time for that.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
that's the thing about collaboration too, is that you take turns and you get to know the dynamic and who's going to need what and who needs to step forward more, on a given day than another person, or who needs to step back, or, I mean, we can't all be on all of the time, so that's like the most wonderful thing about collaboration. And yeah, so.
I also like the way it's worked organically. And I don't really like using that word, but it just seems to kind of fall into place. And part of this question was what aspect of yourself do you bring to it? And I didn't even want to talk about whatever it was I brought to her. I just wanted to talk about Michelle and Siobhan and what I thought they brought to it, And I just really respect the way Michelle just bites off a project and shows it so much respect for the individual and the planet at the same time in all of her pieces, and you're tenacious, Michelle. She's from a book club, over 20 people for 20 years or something like that. I don't know. And Siobhan does this crazy, wild research into every aspect of your interest in life. And I totally love the way you both handle materials. You're so experimental. You're just willing to try anything. So I just think we're a good group. I'm not talking about myself necessarily, but I could identify by you asking that question, Chris. I'm blown away by their crazy experimentation with materials sometimes. And I just appreciate that. And I genuinely feel like I think we have a project forming right now. I don't know what it is, but I think there's something happening right now. We're testing it out with the videos. So.
And the best too.
And, I would just say just to speak about Anna. Anna is the most amazing storyteller on the face of the planet. So she's got a story to tell about everything that walks in the door.
I don't know how I know them.
And Michelle too. You guys are just amazing. One thing I will say, not that we're all just gonna praise each other right now, but sometimes we have bad days,
Yeah.
And we're not our best selves, but that's, that's.
I described it once as it's like I have two more sisters.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I already have three. So
yeah.
These are the sisters you choose.
Yeah.
I want to invite the public to ask questions, and I'm not sure that the people that are in here all know where to go to in the questions. You can choose whether the chat feature or the Q&A feature to ask those. But maybe as I wait for those to come in, maybe you can tell me a little bit about of the workshops that are virtual and online, which I know, like just my example is, Bhavna taught about beading with mirrors and intricate embroidery classes while we were at MCA. And now she offered teaching how to make chai, which is also a cultural connection of hers, but it seemed like a very intimate, generous, home inviting type of experience. So I want to, maybe you can tell me a little bit about how some of these workshops have morphed and how some of the collaborators and the artists participating with you have found other aspects either of their practice or their personal, and again, that vulnerability of bringing themselves to the table in these new iterations.
Yeah, I so honor that. I mean, how, for one thing, we have to make do with what's in our houses. But like the one that's coming up on Saturday, which is our last one of this round, which we're not eliminating. We may have another round. We're probably haven't announced this officially yet, but we're probably going to keep this going for a bit. But Christine Forrester is combining yoga and gardening. And we're going to be doing, you know, like a asanas with gardening tips and probably some cooking out of it too. You know, what a creative, wonderful thing to put together. And that's what she's doing right now at home, are those things. So that's cool.
Good.
I
So-
really, I love your example, Chris, of Bhavna. I was so thrilled that she was going to, what is this? She's going to show us how to make chai? A complicated drink? Is it complicated? And it was so simple. I was so thrilled to learn how to do it.
Yeah, and one thing I want to mention too is just how completely generous all of these people are that
Oh my
are
gosh,
offering
yeah.
their skills and their know-how and welcoming the public into their homes.
And their
I mean,
nervousness.
we are so grateful
Mhm.
to
Yeah.
all of them. You know, I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, we have a question, and that is, how challenging is it to work with the public? What are some of those challenges that emerge from working with audiences? Because you all have practices that don't involve necessarily having to have the public be part of it, but maybe is there challenges in terms of this project?
Well, I mean, when we were in terms of this project now, or in terms of our
I
project?
think in general, and as it's morphed, maybe.
I mean, now, of course, it would be worrying about Zoom bombers, but that hasn't happened. But yeah, you just never know who's going to walk through the door, right? So when we're doing live workshops, so you have to be able to pivot.
Pivot, exactly. Pivot.
Yeah, I don't know. You guys want to?
Yeah, I think it's kind of one of those exchanges of trust and energy that happens with the public. You know, I think that we all in the space are open, and so we have not had like anger, or I mean, there've been a very few times that we felt the need to maybe, you know, hustle someone gently out the door. But those are so rare compared to how many people are just blown away. You know, like, here's my pants and you're going to mend them. I can't believe you're going to mend them. And so, you know, then the exchange of that becomes, they're generous. I mean, people, the guard at MCA brought us pies because we fixed his pants.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it seems like there's more acts of exchange and generosity than there was challenges, even in that uncertainty of welcoming the unknown, even the possible Zoom bummer into the conversation.
And what's so wonderful, so the first time we did the project at 1805, we met all these people that just somehow found out about us through wherever we were publicized, and they have come back. So we've developed these friendships with people in every iteration. Here we are now on virtual workshops, and we're getting some of those same people that we met in the first time that just, you know, cold call.
And people like my friend's daughter who lives in Illinois.
Oh yeah, that's
actually
so great.
kind of being able to get people that weren't, you know, and could never have come because of proximity. So that's
true. We can get people, you know, oh, Bhavna's some relative of hers from England called in during her chai workshop. So
I think it really funny when was Debbie and her sisters all on the same Zoom at the same time.
all the Italian sisters.
The Italian sisters, man. Whoa. It was funny and wonderful. It's a great, very organized and fun YouTube video. pasta making.
Mhm.
If you've never made it, this woman just makes it so simple,
Yeah, you
so
will.
wonderful. Mhm.
Which brings me maybe even to, I'm not seeing additional questions here, or maybe there's another one, but so much of to do in person is ephemeral. Like you teach the workshop and there's documentation of the project, but that experience kind of, the friendships grow, but the moment kind of goes into that memory
Mhm.
path. But now with video, we can go back and revisit. And
Yeah.
how much do we revisit, or do we not revisit these experiences? I'm loving that the chai video is there because
Yeah.
I'm a chai fan and I never learned how to make it, and now I
Right.
have a teacher.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, it is a little, I don't know how it's going to translate. Are we going to be as funny when it's taped?
I know. I keep thinking like there's so many professional how-to YouTube videos out
Yeah.
there, YouTube channels, and ours just seems so folksy.
Yeah, they're
But
very
it is
folksy.
what
Yeah.
it is, you know,
Uh-huh,
it's real
uh-huh.
time. We're not
Yeah.
trying to be too polished. We're
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
So I just have another question that just came in, and it says, do you have projects or aspirations as a trio that you're hoping to experience within the next little while? And this is a question from L. Simon, who's also thanking you for this gentle and inspiring conversation.
we were talking
I-
about doing a collaborative sewing workshop, possibly.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
you know, it'll happen because that's how this rolls. We just trust and something shows up and
Yeah. Mhm.
we get the cart and the truck and here we go, you know, or it's a different form.
Mhm.
I think we all have a trust in that this is necessary, and God forbid we need it after the next election even more. Yes,
Mhm. Mhm.
we may need to be doing some voting registration again.
Mhm. Mhm.
I'm with you.
Mhm.
I think we have just a few minutes left, and maybe this is an opportunity just to remind us, where do we find these projects? Like, where do they live in terms of your website, all those handles? And I know I had it on my last slide, which I'm happy to bring back, but maybe if you want to tell us a little bit.
I think the website's really important. It's laid out there really well. It's ToDoMending.org. It's not dot.
Oh, you're right. Oh,
Yeah.
oops.
Yeah. So it's
.org.
yeah, it's .org. And under the events tab is where all the videos are. So it's pretty simple to find your way there. And we'll be working on uploading images from MCA this summer.
We have a to-do page on Facebook and we have it at to-do
Instagram.
project on Instagram. And so, yeah, we try to keep doing all of those as best we can. As much as we hate it, we keep trying to post and let everybody know how that is rolling. So yeah, follow us on those.
And I do think that we have talked about this, but haven't solidified potentially putting things into some kind of a physical format, a book format.
Well, that'd be fantastically generous for all of us that love seeing your work. And for those that haven't been able to be part of some of those workshops, I know there's one coming up this Saturday, and it would be the last one, correct?
Last one so far.
So far, but
Yes.
the last one that they've put publicly in terms of a calendar and schedule.
Yeah.
Let's just say we thought this might be over by this time when we pitched. So yeah, that's not happening. And it's 10:30 on Saturday. Christine Forrester, and the link will be in our Instagram bio and on Facebook, and it is already on our website.
Website.
Great.
Well, thank you. We have just a few minutes of downtown at sundown. One of the things that also makes downtown at sundown special is that when you walk into our galleries, there's always a DJ. DJ Hernandez has been a staple of downtown at sundown for the last 6 years.
Wow.
And when we shelter in place, we were like, how do we keep something like that going? And how do we bring it to those of us who love the environment of downtown at sundown? And so he created a playlist for us in Spotify. So as you wrap up, start making dinner, have a drink, or chill after this conversation, you can listen to his playlist, which we shared the link on our social medias for the museum and Instagram and on Facebook. And he created the playlist in response to our digital collection. So he normally responds to exhibitions. Now he responded to 32 works from our digital collection.
Nice.
So
that's really nice.
Stay tuned. Enjoy your evening. Hope you enjoyed virtual downtown with us. I very much love hanging out with this 3 amazing ladies and artists and generous human beings. So thank you for indulging me in this conversation.
Thank
And
you.
thank you to our audience for most of what I'm seeing is thank yous and telling us that the conversation was wonderful. So thank you to the audience for being with us.
Virtual clapping.
Yeah, virtual clapping, right? That's good. I like that.
It's just best. Thank you again. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. So we'll be leaving the screen. Bye.
Bye.